the boss. 1 week into living with Christian, and they had gotten into a routine. Christian would wake up an hour before her and go on a run. She'd hear him tinker around the kitchen, open the cabinets and grabbing the coffee, shaking the box of cereal into his favorite Jets bowl from the 1998 game his dad went to. She'd lie awake in bed, holding her breath as he walked near her door to go to the bathroom. She'd wait until he had stepped into the shower before dashing out of bed to set up a cup of coffee. She had timed it well in the last 3 days so that her coffee was done and she was safely back in her room before Christian stepped out of the shower. She had even gotten faster after the unfortunate towel incident on day 2 when she had walked right into him with a scalding hot cup of coffee. She'd been so distracted by him wrapped in nothing but a towel, the water rivulets still dripping down his chest. His very, very well-toned chest. By the time that she came back to reality, it was too late. She had Christian knocked into one another so quickly that she dropped the coffee. He probably still had burns up his calves from the liquid as the cup smashed to the ground and the coffee splattered upwards. He didn't even have a reaction. He stood stock still and then politely asked her to move out of the way. She watched as he stepped gingerly around the puddle, locking himself in his room and leaving her to clean up the mess. Since then, she assumed it was best to stay out of his way in the morning. She was a guest here, and she was messing up his morning routine. Back in the solace of her bedroom, she sipped her coffee, trying to pay less attention to Christian's bathroom habits. She heard the shower turn off and the faucet turn on, the familiar clink of his razor against the sink's edge, and his low, deep hum of the Beach Boys. She would never confess to knowing this much about him. That would be too embarrassing. But there was something nice about predicting his behaviors. Christian was reliable, and she loved that on any given weekday between 7:15 and 7:23 a.m., she could bank on hearing Kokomo. Letting his hum fade into the background, she brought her attention back to the task at hand. She was finally meeting Mr. Ingram today. He had sent her a cryptic email late last week, something about Thailand or Hungary or perhaps both. He wasn't quite sure where he had left the latest script he was reading. Would she mind terribly if they tossed the idea of her being his assistant and instead she kept doing what she was doing? At first, she panicked. She thought she was losing her job, but after a few moments of deep breathing, she realized that this was possibly the best outcome. She could continue flying under the radar and making money while doing it. If Mr. Ingram didn't want or need a personal assistant like his wife had implied, that was fine by her. Besides, after coffee with him today, she probably wouldn't see him for a good 6 months, according to his self-described travel schedule. This would be a piece of cake. She heard the bathroom door open in Christian's telltale footstep pattern as he made his way back to his room. She would deposit her coffee cup in the sink before scurrying to the bathroom. With any luck, Christian would leave the apartment before she even got out of the shower. Apparently, luck was not on her side today. Not only had Christian used all of the hot water, but she stubbed her toe on the edge of her bed while getting dressed. Still shivering from her ice rinse, she headed into the kitchen wrapped in her robe for warmth. Oh, geez. Hi. I'm sorry. Why was she apologizing? Christian turned around from the sink, leaning against it. What are you apologizing for? If anything, I'm in your way. I'm running late today. This was the most they'd spoken since dinner. Devin grabbed eagerly at the opening. Why are you running late? She winced. It came out more accusatory than curious. She watched as Christian shifted his stance from easy and laid back to defensive. I didn't sleep well last night. The AC was acting up and it kept shutting off, so I was overheating. When I finally fell asleep, it was an hour past when I normally get up. Then I had to cut my run short because of it. It's been one of those days. She noted the dark circles under his eyes. He really did look like shit. She leaned in closer involuntarily. She knew his face almost as well as her own. When had Christian begun looking almost haggard? Is everything okay? You seem out of it. She threw the olive branch out there and hoped he would pick it up. He paused before answering, as if considering whether to accept her offer of concern. Yeah, everything's fine. Work's been a lot and my mom has been having some trouble with my dad's estate. But it's always the same story. Shit gets messy and then the big lawyers come in and sort it out. My mom just is overreacting this time. Devin vaguely remembered this conversation from years ago. Something about a half-sibling or a step-uncle, maybe. Did your mom ever get the estate moved into your name like she wanted? The details were hazy, but they were slowly coming back. Christian's mom had been in a fight with her husband's siblings about a sizable share of the inheritance, but there had been pushback about it if Christian, at barely 20, was able to be responsible for the money. She had no idea the amount, nor did she care. She remembered it being a really stressful time for him because his mom had been losing money paying the lawyer's fees, only to find out that she had no chance of winning. It had nearly bankrupted the family. No, she's tried a few more times over the years, but it's never worked out. He shook his head as if saying no more. Enough now. I keep telling her it's fine, that we don't need it. I certainly don't. I got a scholarship to my MBA and I'm almost done paying off my undergrad debt. At this point, I don't want that money, especially if they're all trying so hard to hold on to it. I can't imagine wanting to use it after how badly they treated us when we asked for help. I'm sorry. I didn't know it had gotten that bad. That must have been awful. It sucked. My mom made me call up my dad's stepbrother and basically beg him to pay for Jesse's college. Jesse refused to do it, so my mom called me up out of the blue and told me that it was a non negotiable. If he didn't grant us the money through the trust, Jesse wouldn't be able to go to college. Then she wouldn't be able to go to med school, and I called. He didn't give me an inch, and Jessie still went to college. She's in med school in California, by the way. I don't think I told you that. He gave her a wan smile. Devin looked back at him with an open heart and hopeful eyes. It had been so long since they'd really spoken to one another about their lives. She clung on to this piece of information for dear life. I had no idea. That's amazing. I'm so proud of her. The next time you talk to her, please tell her that I say hi. She was always wonderful. She watched as his eyes lit up, but his mouth refused to turn into a smile. In other terms, their moment was a connection that was over. I will. Well, I've got to go. Now I really am late. And Dev, not that I'm looking or anything, but you might want to consider a different robe for the future. He glanced down at her chest and she followed suit. Jesus Christ, it was cold in the shower. That is your fault. Devin's nipples shot straight out of the light cotton of her robe. Christian had the childishness to demonstrate the shooting of laser beams around the kitchen and before laughing to himself and walking away. As he brushed past her, he rested a hand on her shoulder. It was the slightest touch, but she eased under it. When they were on campus and heading separate directions, this is how he would leave her. She had forgotten his habit. He would come in close and she would always think he was about to kiss her on the cheek or give her a hug. Instead, he would opt for a hand on her shoulder as if to say, there, on to the next thing. At first, she had found it disorienting, but after a while, she began to find it comforting. She noticed he didn't do it with anyone else, which made her feel special, chosen even. To have him do it now meant that she was climbing into his good graces, whether or not he realized it. Not my problem that your nips are frozen, Dev. He walked into the hallway. Have a good day, he shouted before pulling the door shut. Devin pulled the tie of the robe tighter around her, fighting a shiver. She couldn't tell if she was shaking from the cold anymore. By the time she arrived at work, she was still frazzled. The thought of Christian seeing her nipples clear through her robe left her feeling both unsettled and turned on at the same time. She shook the thought out of her head. She needed to focus. She had a coffee scheduled with Mr. Ingram in 10 minutes, and she wanted to appear like she had her shit together. She went to stand outside the stage manager's office. Mr. Ingram had specified to meet there of all places for reasons still unclear to Devin. At this point, she had been working long enough to find her rhythm. She was mildly concerned. Mr. Ingram was about to upend all of her newfound peace. What do you mean there's no money left? Where could it have possibly have gone? We've got a $50,000 grant last week. She heard a booming male voice through the office door. She should step away, give him some privacy, but the eavesdropping was enticing. She heard the murmur of a woman's voice almost soothing in response. Then the door opened and Devin had to jump back in order to make it seem less likely that she had heard everything. Can I help you? A tall, older man in a three-piece suit stared back at her from behind tortoiseshell glasses. He towered over her, a look of curiosity and annoyance gracing his face. Honey, that's Devin, your new staff member. Christine Ingram peeked out from behind her husband's body, gently moving him out of the doorframe. She extended her hand to Devin, smoothing tensions as she went. Devin, my apologies. I kept him too long. But this is my husband, Dave. You can call him Mr. Ingram or Dave, whichever you prefer. Turning to her husband, she spoke directly to him like a child. Dave, Devin has been a wonderful asset to the company. She is our runner. We discussed you needing more help to manage the theaters, and Devin has filled that role. She has extensive background from the public, and I suggest you set up a time with her for mentorship weekly. She put her hand on his bicep, giving it a forceful squeeze. Devin watched with a gaping mouth. Christine Ingram was managing her husband, and she was impressed. She was impressed with how well she did so. Now I have to leave you both. Enjoy your time together. Dave, I'll call you later. Devin, it was lovely to see you, and thank you for the work you've been doing. With that, Christine breezed away, leaving both Dave and Devin in an awkward silence. Devin, you said? Where did that name come from? He looked at her curiously as though examining a specimen. I don't know. My mom picked it, probably from a soap opera character or something. Devin cringed internally. She couldn't have come up with a better answer. Interesting. Devin is not a name suited for power, but then again, neither is Dave. Perhaps David, but not Dave. We don't choose our names, do we, Devin? We must live up to the potential they hold. Devin nodded along, barely following where he was going, both figuratively and literally. He had begun walking off in the direction of the exit, with Devin following hastily behind. Now you understand that my wife coerced you into this job to follow me around like a puppy. I can assure you this is not what I require, nor is what I want you to be doing. I've spoken to various managers, and they all agree you're an asset to the system, so I suppose keep doing whatever it is that you're doing. Devon trailed behind, offering murmurs of agreement. She was on board with this plan, except for one problem. Mr. Ingram, what about the one-on-one mentorship? She held her breath as he turned his heel to face her. Devon, my wife has a terrible habit of wanting people to spy on me. The notion that I require a practical child to meet with me once a week for mentorship isn't as absurd as me asking you to produce a play. Are you able to produce a play, Devon? He looked at her pointedly, and something in her gut instinct kicked in. Actually, yes. I produced several. Dave backed away from her, offering a look that could read as impressed or snarky, depending on the angle. Interesting. This was at the public? Didn't you set it on fire? She winced at the word fire, but would not give this pompous asshole one more time to berate her. Fire is a term I would never ascribe to what happened at the public. I produced several plays in that time, all of which were positively reviewed. The last one happened to contain pyrotechnics, and prior to the incident you're talking about, had gone off without a hitch. She leveled her gaze at him, waiting for a retort, but nothing came. Interesting. You handle yourself well, Devon. I respect a person who's able to uphold their integrity in the face of adversity. If something of interest comes across your desk in the next few weeks that you would like to discuss, do let me know. I'd be curious to see what this play piques your producing interest. Until then, please stick to your day-to-day routine. He gave a slight head nod before exiting the theater altogether. Devon stood dumbly staring up the exit sign, wondering what the hell had just happened.